Welcome to the Expanse of Love Dialogues, Conversations to Expand Love. In this episode, I interview two sisters, Christi and Kathryn, who are separated by the Atlantic Ocean, but connected by life and in their hearts. They share a really vulnerable story about how they grew up and some of the challenges they faced, why their connection is so strong, and how that shaped how they are as adults and how they support each other today. It's a really rich, loving, positive conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Expanse of Love Dialogues, Conversations to Expand Love. I'm Christopher Miller, your host, and I'm blessed to have two wonderful guests with me today, Kathryn and Christi, who are sisters who live on the opposite sides of the world and are on the opposite side of the world to me. So we're coming to you from New Zealand, the United States, and France, and it's an exciting international episode of the Expanse of Love Dialogues. And given your relationship as siblings, I guess I'm curious, Christi and Kathryn, about what early childhood was like and what your earliest memories of each other were.
You want to go first, Kathryn?
Sure. I don't know what my earliest memory is, but I went back as far as I could. I have a memory of us sitting on your bed in your room and confessing to each other our deepest, darkest secrets. And who knows what we thought back then was just the most horrible thing that we had done. But I just remember having this sense that I could tell you anything and you would never judge me, and that you could do the same with me. And that was just, yeah, that's one of the earliest memories.
Nice.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known that. I think my early memories are very physical in nature. Like, I have memories of when we went on like family camping trips and we had this like Toyota minivan, and there weren't any seat belts going on or that kind of thing back in the 70s. And at one point we had this big beanbag chair that we chucked in the car next to the other seats, and we just had this way of snuggling up. Like, I have these little hugging sloths on my couch back there, and we just seem to always have like ways to get comfy together. Okay, if you put your leg this way and my leg goes that way and your shoulder is down here, then we get this perfect little nest of coziness. And so it seemed like we could always find the way to do that, whether it was on like a recliner chair or a beanbag chair, or just, I don't know, figuring out how to both hold the canoe over our heads to run down to the lake, or it just seemed like our bodies were very in sync from the earliest moments.
Yeah, nice. And I guess what I love about those examples is, Christi, yours is very physical in terms of touch and physical presence with each other. And Kathryn, yours was very emotional. So a willingness to share and be open and vulnerable with each other from a very early age, right? We talk about what all of my guests so far have met as adults, and we have talked extensively about unconditional, non-judgmental love and support. And I think what's remarkable about your acknowledgement is you achieved that very early in your relationship. And we'll explore how and whether that has been sustained over time. And how did love show up between you as kids?
I would say it's all of that. Like Christi was saying, the physical connection, and we were always very cuddly and close, and just really being able to trust each other. Our childhood wasn't always easy. We had a very emotionally unhealthy mother, and so I think that we bonded in a way from feeling protective of each other. And trying to find safety in our love for each other.
Yeah, I would say that too. I think it took us a long time to have a more differentiated relationship as adults. As little kids, I would call it trauma bonding. We wouldn't have known that at the time. We would have just said, it almost felt like we're attached at the hip. And for me, it feels like my right hip. It just feels like I have almost like twins. And we used to tease people and joke that you can't tell us apart. We agree on everything. We're twins. I could show up and people be like, are you Christi or Kathryn? And like, which one are you? And we like to be interchangeable. And there was probably some fear, at least from my side, like we had this thing that we would say, we agree. We would say that a lot, but there was this fear of, oh no, what if the other person didn't agree? Then what would happen? So there was just a lot of looking to each other for protection and safety and standing together against the odds, or looking out for each other just to, protection and safety. It takes a while to untangle that and develop a different kind of love relationship.
And there's two words coming up for me as you describe that. One is faith in each other, and resilience, and the way you contributed to the resilience of each other through the challenges of childhood and the challenges with your mom. And it feels like that contributed to your bond. That was definitely a part of the reason why you're so connected and why you talk about your right hip. Like that's very poignant. And I think it's interesting when you describe your emotional reaction to we agree, and the fear that we might not agree is significant. So how did that creep in? Because as adults, you can't have agreed on everything. But how do you emotionally respond when you choose not to agree or don't agree?
For
I
me,
think
it
that's
still
really
feels,
ongoing.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, it still feels very scary whenever something comes up that there's a disagreement, and I brace myself like, it's okay. It's going to be okay to disagree, Christi. It's still going to be fine. Even the smallest things, like I like purple and you like red, and it's just, oh no. Like,
I'm getting my hair cut 2 inches shorter than you. Can we survive? Yes.
And honestly, Christi's the hardest one that I've had to differentiate from. And I think this again goes back to our upbringing, because our household was extremely religious. And so making agreements and a type of tribalism was what we were taught is what love is. This is like faith and family, is you stand up in church and you recite the creeds, and you have to agree for your survival in that community. And so it all makes a lot of sense if you understand the crazy background that we come from. But yeah, it can be really scary. And for whatever reason, I could fairly easily say, okay, I don't agree with my mother, my brother, my other sister, but Christi is by far the hardest one for me to have to remind myself, because we have that close bond, and it's very hard for me to remind myself that I'm allowed to be different from her and take a different path in life, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was even a story like when we were in high school. I was in the school plays. And so Anne Frank or Our Town or this or that, I'd be one of the main roles. And there would be months and months of going to play practice every evening. And it was the thing that I did. And then when I was a senior in high school, I think you would have been a freshman, Kathryn, or something. And there was this one play, and I had tried out for the lead role. I can't even remember which play it was. And so our teacher, the English teacher, Mr. Van Tol, who was in charge of casting for the play, was so confused because he was telling me the news that I didn't get the lead role, but then trying to break it to me very gently that my little sister Kathryn had gotten the lead role that I had wanted. And I was super excited and started jumping up and down. Yay, she got it. This is so exciting. And like, it was pure joy. It was fine. I'm like, I can do something else. I can work on the sets behind the scenes. Just so excited for her. And then he was like, oh, that wasn't what I expected. And then he gave the news to Kathryn that she had gotten the lead, and she burst into tears. No, give it to Christi, give it to Christi. And he was just
I'm
like,
tearing
what
up
is
now
going
just
on?
thinking of it.
You're like crying. No, she didn't get the lead. It's terrible. And he's just like, what? The wrong person is crying here. What's going on?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lovely reflection of how deeply you cared about each other, right? Kathryn didn't want you to be hurt, Christi. And Christi, your pure joy and unconditional love for Kathryn for achieving something that was one of your dreams, but the fact that Kathryn was able to live one of her dreams by getting the part, that's massive. And I think that's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful reflection of how your relationship was at the time.
And I think it also speaks to how our relationship has continued to be, like just as Christi was telling the story and describing how she was cheering for me, I think that's been her role in my life going forward. She's always been my number one cheerleader and just so excited when I'm doing well. And it's made all the difference to just have that voice in my head to know that somebody is cheering me on.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Beautiful. And I guess along those lines, how did love mature or transform through childhood into teenagehood and then into adulthood? What did it look and feel like? What was different? What was the same?
We went on parallel tracks because I went to a conservative Christian college, and then she went to the same conservative Christian college. And then we both started dating guys at that school. And then we both got married in a double wedding ceremony. So that's how extreme the like, we agree, we do the same thing. And looking back, we could be like, first of all, why are little kids getting married that young? I was 21. Kathryn, you were 20 getting married. And so that's again that really religious context that we were in, where there was just this expectation that you're going to get married young. It was going to be celibacy until marriage, and then you were going to have kids. And so there was this track you were supposed to be on, and that everyone agreed was the thing to do. And so as adults, we actually ended up spending about 20 plus years on different continents from each other. And so not even always knowing what was going on in each other's lives, and not knowing about the day to day. And so then in the last several years, when we've been more in contact, it's, oh man, what was that like for you, those 20 years that you were apart? And then how do we want to be now when we can make very different decisions about marriage and family and which country you want to live in and all kinds of big decisions, that nobody has to be on that track anymore.
Yeah. So there feels like a little more freedom, a little more lightness to your relationship now compared to what it was.
I would say we brought lightness to our relationship before, because there were such high expectations of achievement academically, and like she said, getting married and having a family and career. And it was just it was a very intense expectations. So I think our relationship back then was always an element of, how can we survive this? How can we make this fun? But then, like she said, we were just apart physically for so long that I think I would almost say it the other way around, that now we are able to go deeper and really talk about what did that actually feel like, and we have new language for it, and we don't have to try to fit everything into this paradigm that wasn't really our own terminology. So it's just very different. I wouldn't necessarily say lighter, I would say more like deeper and more true to what I would call a loving relationship, because we can offer each other that autonomy and sovereignty over our own decisions, while just having a deep respect for each other.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there was a lot of false hilarity or something. There was a lot of silliness and laughing and all this, but a lot of it was just a cover for like, man, our lives are really hard. Whereas now I liked your word true, Kathryn. There's a lot more just truth. This is what's happening for me. There's a lot more ability to cry or get angry, or just a much broader range of emotions that are possible. And I think we've both felt like it's such a huge honor, because there was, you use like the words intense expectations, but I think when you're supposed to always be the best of the best and be the model Christian perfect person out there in the world, when you have a real loneliness or need or questioning or just hard stuff, knowing that you can call somebody and be received, it's been a very big shift that, like, I will share, this is my deep sadness with Kathryn, and she's just, wow. Most people don't get to see that, and I haven't gotten to see that even when we were younger. We would share a lot of silly joking around, sarcasm, that kind of thing.
I think your word, Kathryn, deeper, and there's a richness to your adult relationship that you're very aware of each other and the presence you bring to your sibling relationship. I guess I'm curious now, in the present or in the very recent past, how special are you to each other and why?
She's my best friend, and the physical aspect is still very present. I've been traveling as a house sitter, and I had a house sit out in San Diego. And let me just say, the Southern California vibe is very interesting. I'm giving that preface because I went to a cuddle party, and I don't know if that's like, other than the Southern California vibe, I don't know if that's a thing that people understand, but they just have these parties where you can show up and cuddle with people that you just met. And so I went to one, and we were just playing these different games and cuddling, and I just immediately just felt the missing of Christi, and just like missing that physical bond of just having someone that you can just snuggle up to on the couch. And it's very rare to have that. It's been one of the hardest things in my life, is to be so far apart from her.
Yeah, me too. I would say it's like the ultimate specialness. I don't know if you can compare to like a marriage relationship. I've been married 32 years now, but there is this very deep friendship bond. And um, I think even my husband gets a little nervous about, you still love me the most, right? I'm like, yeah.
Sometimes.
Depending on the day.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was married. So we got married in the double wedding, like she said, and I was married 27 years. And at the end of my marriage, I remember being in a marriage counseling session and being like, what's funny, I don't even fantasize about being with other men. I fantasize about being a nun or something. And it's taken me a little while to realize what I meant by that. But I think I just literally wanted to live with my sister. like just my happy
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people assume that soulmates show up in romantic relationships, but I believe soulmates can show up in any relationships and that we can have multiple soulmates simultaneously. And so the connection you two are describing feels very soulmate-ish to me. You are very aligned as human beings and care deeply about each other, which is lovely to witness. It's lovely to witness. And I just picking up on the distance between you. How do you maintain your relationship and your closeness with the distance?
We have a
Well, thankfully,
Wordle-based friendship now.
we have a what based?
Wordle.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
The
that's
New
right.
York Times has games, and so she'll do hers at 2 minutes after midnight, and then it'll be like 7 a.m. for me or 8 a.m. and I'll get them and I'll send my New York Times games back to her. So that's like a sort of daily ritual.
Proof of life, daily check-in.
Yes, like we always know the other person is still alive that day, and then it's just very random, sporadic, long phone calls or text messages. But I wouldn't say that it's not, oh, we always have our call on Saturday. We're not the most consistent rhythm kind of people. It'll be more like, oh, I haven't seen you in 7 months. How about if you come stay with me for 4 months? And
because I was traveling as a house sitter, I had a lot of freedom too. So in the last several years, I've been able to go to France, at least once a year, if not twice a year. So that, and then Christi is just extremely generous about taking me in and letting me stay there for a month at a time and keeping me fed and all
I
that.
like
So,
having you around. It doesn't feel like generous. It just is like, cool.
Yeah, nice. And Christy, you mentioned your husband and his reaction to this relationship. I'm curious about, I guess, any and all other relationships in your lives. How does this sisterhood influence positively or negatively? How does it influence the other relationship, the other important relationships in your life?
Yeah, I feel like we intertwine our relationships quite a lot. Like Kathryn knew my husband not before I did, but like they were doing outings together in Chicago and stuff like that. And so she's known him almost as long as I have. And I would just say some some of my closest friends and people who have come through Awaken Coach Institute, which of course is a big part of my life, is just because Kathryn introduced me to them, and vice versa. I think I've introduced Kathryn to spiritual directors and life coaches and stuff. And it's really enriched both of our lives to be like, oh, you're friends with Michelle. Now I'm friends with Michelle. And you know my friend Jill, and now you like, okay, you met Calvin. And so we just have more and more overlapping circles. If you looked at Facebook friendships or something, I might have 3,000 Facebook friends or something, but the person who I have the most overlapping friendships with is Kathryn. It's like she knows all my people from all the different groups, and we're interested in each other, knowing each other's friends. And
Nice. And how about you,
Yeah,
Kathryn?
that's interesting that you answer it that way, because that's very true for me too, of just how we're polyamorous with our friendships. We share friends. But I was thinking in terms of my relationship with my children and other partners and stuff, that I feel like Christi is my number one sounding board, where I can say, oh, I had this thing come up with my daughter, and I know that she'll listen in a way that she's not going to try to tell me what to do, and just be a coaching presence basically for, I can just work through my other relationships talking to her about it. And she trusts me to figure it out eventually.
But I think that really helps the adult relationship too, is that we've both done life coach training and spiritual direction training, and we've both been to therapy. And so there's a lot of similar, there's a way that we both threw away the conditioning that we grew up with, where in that religious environment, there was a right and a wrong, there's heaven and hell, there's good and evil, there is the way things are supposed to be done and the way they are not supposed to be done. And I think to the extent that we were still in that worldview, it really limits anybody's ability to have a real relationship with anyone. And coach training, at least for me, it just tipped everything upside down, because it was all about choice and trust your body and listen to your emotions and do what's best for yourself. And what are your desires? What do you want for your life? And you are the committee that gets to make the decision. It's not everybody else. The male church elder board is not going to come to your house and tell you how to live your life. And I think the fact that both of us have gone through that kind of shift in the way we view life and relationships has been really important. But I think it would be really hard to go back into that family and religious system with any kind of integrity.
Yeah, you are both strong, independent people that are aware of the positive and negatives of the external environment in a way that you weren't as teenagers, right? You were using humor and lightness and sarcasm, and you had a whole bunch of defense mechanisms that kept you both alive and that kept you both thriving to a point. But now you are fully autonomous, very strong. Yeah, and your sister relationship reflects that, right? You are totally open and non-judgmental with each other in a way that you couldn't and didn't have as kids from the most significant people in your life. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I would say it's still a work in progress, but it's nice that, more than nice, it's such a gift, because I think, like, I just wrote my memoir in the past year, and only a few people have read it so far because it hasn't been published yet. But people who haven't grown up in that American evangelical kind of punitive system, they read my book and are like really shocked and, oh my gosh, that was such a bizarre way to be raised. I didn't even know that existed. I've heard about it in the movies, but who gets raised like that? And so there's only so much you can really share. At least you'd have to really develop a long-term friendship with someone to really get that, if they didn't grow up in that same system. So I think that's part of why our sisterhood and friendship is so important, because you don't have to explain anything.
Mm.
And the other person isn't oh, that is so strange. I've never heard of that. You're like, yep.
Yeah.
We lived it.
Yeah. And I think you might be the only person on the planet that I can go all the way back to childhood with and still be able to, because I think back, if I list all the people I've known since I was younger, I can't connect to them in the same way because a lot of them are still in that hyper religious setting. And then even people from college or my years of marriage or whatever. So you're literally the only person that I can talk to who has seen me through every single stage of life, and we still connect on a deep level. So yeah, I don't really have that in my other friendships. I have other friendships that I've made recently that are very deep and loving friendships, but they just don't have that history with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And the lived experience isn't the same. They even if you're transparent and vulnerable with them and share much of your story, they can't compute on a physical level. Like they can't know what it was like for you and Christi growing up. That's unique to the two of you. So yeah, that in part explains why your relationship is so special. So I want to pick up on the fact that the two of you are coaches and on a statement that I received when I trained, which was don't coach family. so it was one that I slowly grew out of. But I want to ask, given your training as coaches, your expertise in asking great questions and being present and listening, and I just want either of you or both to speak to the boundaries of coaching close family members and the benefits of being a trained coach in family situations.
Yeah. For me, I don't think either of us has ever coached the other, as in had a coach. We've never had a contract, or we've never had a, would you like some coaching around that? And it's never even been like a formal conversation around that. And I don't think either of us would want to do that with each other. It's more the coaching way of living your life, where you just don't think that you're more of an expert on somebody's life than they are, and you don't think that your opinions about their life matter very much. And I think that has been really huge factor in our adult relationship, especially with other family members and other people in the system having opinions about both of us and what we should be doing. And I think it's been very lovely to be able to, I can call Kathryn about anything, and she's just going to be like, yeah, that's your life. It's not my life. And what do you want? So I think the coaching way of living is very, I think you and I, Chris, have talked about loving disinterest before. It's just, I love you and I'm completely disinterested about your outcome. And of course, as sisters, like when you love someone, it can be hard because it's like, oh, I really want you to be happy. And I don't know if this decision you're making is going to lead to that. But regardless, it's not my decision. And so I think knowing boundaries is a really important part of adult loving friendships.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I would say a very similar answer. In 2020, the year of my divorce, I also had a major health crisis and was in the hospital for months. And it was just really interesting to see how my family members responded to that and became very controlling. Take her car keys and don't let her, just treating me like a child and completely stealing my autonomy. Whereas Christi was the only family member who was like, no, she's gonna figure it out. And it's really hard right now. She's going through a lot, but she's the author of her own life. And she was the only one in the family that really saw that. So that's again where she wasn't my coach and she wasn't coaching me, but she was offering that loving presence of just being there, but not telling me what to do. And yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And it was really tricky too, because there was this whole family WhatsApp group. What are we going to do about Kathryn? And I was going, either Kathryn joins this group or I leave the group. I'm not going to stick around to talk about somebody. Yeah, but it did cause some ruptures too, because there is a line in the sand where there is a whole worldview that says we need to make sure other people are doing the right thing. And then there's this other coaching worldview that says we need to let people do what they're going to do. And they might do something stupid, but I could do something stupid too. What makes me God?
I go back to unconditional, non-judgmental love and support, right? For you as her sister, confronted by a whole bunch of family members who wanted to control and wrap cotton wool around Kathryn or keep her safe or prevent her from making a mistake. And you were like, no, she's my sister. She's my adult sister. Let her do what she's going to do. I will be there to support her no matter what.
And that's where the we agree mentality is so different, because it's in that worldview, we agree is what must happen. And it's so scary if it doesn't. And there isn't this sort of, oh, love doesn't depend on agreement.
You had mentioned earlier in the conversation that our relationship now has more of a sense of lightness. And I would say in that sense, it does, because when you give another person permission, not that they need your permission, but when you allow for other people to make their own mistakes and figure it out, then it's more like a sense of playfulness. Like when there isn't a right or wrong, it's just, I'm going to try this and see what happens, and I'm allowed to do that. Then it is lighter, because you're allowed to experiment. You're allowed to surprise yourself and see what happens.
Yeah, I think experiment is a great word. Life is one big experiment, one little nanosecond at a time.
Right.
But the truthfulness is really tricky too, because especially with that kind of background where you can give your own opinion, like, I'm not a huge fan of that medication you're taking, or I'm afraid about this decision that you're making, or whatever. And so finding the boundaries there where I don't have to pretend that I'm like, sure, love that. Love that new whatever is in your life. But it's still, and I think I have to be careful with that more, especially because Kathryn does value my opinion so much. So even stating them at all can be seen as controlling, when it could just be
That's
like,
not your intent.
It's just my personal opinion, but it should be given. It's take it with a grain of salt. Your opinion is 98% valuable. This is my 2 cents. But learning to do that with a really hands-off approach, because there's been times when I've said my opinion thinking that it was just a tiny little opinion, and then it's, oh my gosh, you factored that into your decision more than what's warranted.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at ignoring you.
Yeah. And Christi, you may need to frame it as that friend who's 3 people removed. This is their opinion.
Yes.
I once heard of a person
who thought opinion from the internet. Yes.
Yeah. I asked the AI gods, and the AI gods. Yeah.
I think even then, if it came from Christi, it would still factor higher, because she's just so smart and she reads so much all the time. I'm just like, she must have the answers.
Yeah, or at least a valid opinion. Yeah. Before I close with my final 3 questions, do either of you have questions for me?
I'd be interested to hear what it's like for you. I know in times of grief, especially, people say a lot of really stupid things. Um, so I wonder what it was like for you to find friends who could just be there for you, and if, what you did with people's opinions about how you should walk through life and grief.
Yeah, thanks, Christi. In retrospect, particularly in the first 18 months of losing Fiona, I went very quiet. I went insular. I went to ground. And that was in part to defend myself against stupid actions or stupid words from other people. I had some very close friends. So my family, Fiona died during COVID. So her parents couldn't travel. Her parents were in Scotland. My parents were in Canada. My brother and sister were in Canada. Nobody could travel, right? So I navigated her loss solo. I had some very close friends locally who were and still are unconditional loving support for our family, right? They were some of Fiona's closest friends, right? Loving, supportive friends of Fiona, and by extension, our family. And they are very special people. I was quite shocked at the time that two of Fiona's very close friends disappeared upon her passing, vanished. No text messages, no phone calls, didn't show up at the celebration of life, just disappeared. I was angry about that for a very long time. I'm not anymore. It is a reflection of how they coped with the loss of Fiona. But what all of the experience has led me to realize is that my understanding of grief, my understanding of loss, my understanding of changing your identity because of a loss is so deep, so much deeper now, that in my relationships with clients, in my relationships with friends, in my relationships with family, my empathy and my compassion for anybody going through anything remotely similar. There have been a lot of job losses in New Zealand recently, and I can feel it on behalf of everybody going through it. I can totally feel it because it's more than just the income. It's who you are as a person. It's how you show up every day. It's having routine. It's like there's a whole bunch of losses that go along with a job loss. Yeah, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, but it was not pleasant to go through.
That's really just lovely to hear how you could go through the anger about that and then come out with maybe a coaching thing, like just people are going to have their own path, and that unconditional positive regard, even if it's painful, that people's stories make sense eventually when the way they lived their life is what they needed to do.
There's a big element of forgiveness. If I can't
Sure.
find the energy to forgive, then it affects me, not them. If they like the people who disappeared after Fiona, I'm not hurting them by being angry at them at all. I'm only hurting myself. And so to be able to figure it took me a while, but to figure out that I had to let that go was really valuable and powerful and important, and a life lesson that I couldn't have gotten any other way, or I probably could have, but this was the way the universe decided I was going to learn this lesson.
And anger is such a big part of forgiveness too. I don't know that you can skip over it either.
Yeah, 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 that's right. Yeah. I'm going to ask 3 questions to wrap up, and I would love both of your answers to all 3 questions. The first one is, what's your favorite love story?
I'll go first, Kathryn, on this one.
Okay.
I tend to like the ones that have so much drama in them and a lot of tension and stuff. So like my favorite movies would be things like the Thomas Crown Affair, which I've probably watched like 12 times, or The Tourist, where you have these really suave, debonair, a bit distant women with men who are like having to run across the rooftops of Venice or steal artwork or go off in a helicopter or something like this. And there's a lot of, can I trust you? I'm not sure. And then they find out that this is the one person that they can really let their guard down. And but it's more of a, I don't know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith sort of let me shoot you before I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Kathryn, how about you?
The one that first came to mind for me was from a show called Modern Love. And there's this episode where the doorman of this woman's building just looks out for her in the most beautiful way. And I just cry every time I watch it. It's not a romantic love at all, but just the way that he makes sure that she's safe and has everything she needs and just make sure that she's happy, and not by telling her what to do, but just really being there. I just think it's beautiful.
Nice, nice. And how do you both define love?
For me, it goes back to what we've been talking about this whole conversation, is caring about another person in a way that allows for them to make their own choices, gives them freedom.
Nice. I like it.
For me, I would say love is just so vast. It goes beyond human. And so it's like something that you can just, maybe it would be like a lake or an ocean where you can just lie on your back, float. It's going to hold you up. Mm-hmm. And so then these interpersonal relationships just aren't so hard because you don't have to produce love for someone else. It's not about creating or destroying love. It's this infinite resource that it can't go away. And so even if there's some sort of a sticky point between two people or whatever, you just don't have to get that worried about it, because love itself is foundational and does hold you both. And so you can go live on another continent for 20 years and guess what? It's still going to be there when you figure stuff out.
Yeah, nice. Christi, that reminds me of a post I just made on Valentine's Day. Someone had passed on to me a letter, a supposed letter from Albert Einstein to his daughter on a force in the universe that is unexplainable. And that force is love. And he goes into the scientific analysis of why love is the force that commands all the forces. And it's a beautiful, it doesn't matter how soft you might be. When you read Albert Einstein writing about love, you go, oh, there's something really tangible to this that the world and scientists do not understand. But it's it speaks to what you just said. It speaks to love as an artifact, love as a presence that is in and around and through all things at all times. And even in conflict, it is still sitting there watching, waiting.
And Kathryn and I were blessed to have a dad who was a physicist. And so
wow.
The last conversation I had with him, he was excitedly drawing on napkins about string theory and chaos theory and how your whatever point here is connected to things billions of light years away, and everything is energy and everything is love. And it was just such a beautiful conversation. And there's really nothing to be afraid of. Like, you can be super angry and not have forgiveness in your heart for somebody for 6 years or whatever, and
it can heal.
There's just something deeper, like we're all invited into the grace bubble. And if I can't love you personally right now for the next 10 years, there's plenty of it to go around.
Yeah, 100%. And my last question is, how do you both consistently increase love in your life?
My answer to that one is what we were just talking about. It's just the awareness that love is so vast and expansive that I think for me, it's just always coming back to myself and my own groundedness in that expansive love, that then when I come into contact with other people, that it doesn't feel like Christi said, I don't have to produce it. I don't have to try to make it happen. I just, as long as I'm connected to the source of infinite love, then it's just going to naturally overflow. So I don't have to, I wouldn't say I try to increase love, because I don't know if it can be increased. I think it's already infinite, and it's just a matter of tapping in and staying centered and grounded.
Nice. Thanks, Kathryn.
I would say on a personal level, like love is infinite, but what helps me notice it more is when I reach out to receive it. Just for an example, with my memoir coming out, I just went through a real, oh no, grief and panic. And I hope telling my story doesn't traumatize people. And what am I doing writing this? And so just having all these emotions, fear and sadness, and learning more and more to just say that. So like with my Awaken faculty team, with my beloved community friends, I can just, with Kathryn, I can just say, this is what's going on. And it always reminds me, like instantly, I'll get a bunch of text messages, a couple of phone calls, like a reach out for, do you want to have coffee? We could use a group hug. And then it just reminds me, like, okay, asking for it and trusting that it's there, I receive. And so I think, to me, receiving love has always been what's the most difficult. It's not that hard to give love to others, but remembering it's there for me. And all I need to do is ask. It always shows up.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And it's interesting, some of the data that I'm collecting from the Expanse of Love assessment, which measures love given, love received, and love witnessed. Love received is consistently the lowest score because people know how to give love. They may be oblivious, but they are aware of witnessing love, and receiving love is something they have to consciously lean into. So that's exactly as you describe it. Yeah, great. Can I thank you both for your time and your wisdom? And it's been lovely to chat and fantastic to explore so many facets of your relationship and life growing up, and where you are as adults now. I think the fact that you had a best friendship very early and you had unconditional love very early, and you've been able to sustain it over the course of a lifetime for both of you is wonderful and remarkable. And I'm pleased for you both. It's lovely to witness. And I'm really grateful for your time today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah.
What a great conversation with Christi and Kathryn. It was such a warm, positive, loving conversation. I was struck by some of our the last elements of our conversation, where Christi spoke about love as an ocean and being so vast that it supports us all of the time. And Kathryn spoke about love being the source in everyone's lives. And that inspired me to share the story about Albert Einstein's letter to his daughter, where a pure scientist really acknowledged that love is one of the only forces that cannot be explained, and may be the force that governs all of the forces. So for me, the spirit of that last bit of conversation really captured what we had covered over the course of the 45 minutes. I was so grateful to Christi and Kathryn for being very vulnerable about their childhood and some of the traumas they went through and some of the challenges in navigating relationships with family members and members of their community. And it was interesting to reflect on how that's affected their relationship as adults and how they share and coach and communicate and protect each other. So I think there's a lesson in healing, and there's a lesson in really an openness with the adults in our life that supports us and offers unconditional love to us, because that's what Christi and Kathryn have been able to build and sustain for each other, even across the Atlantic Ocean. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've certainly enjoyed hosting it, and I look forward to hopefully you listening to the next episodes. Thanks very much.